Have you ever seen something that you just can't explain? You know, a flicker of movement out of the corner of your eye, or a weird sound in the middle of the night that makes you wonder if you're really alone. Well, you're not the only one. Millions of people report paranormal experiences. But is it actually spirits or is it science? Let's dive in and uncover the real secrets behind seeing ghosts. So let's set the scene. It's 1989. The famous Bollywood actress Dimple Kapadia is shooting a horror film inside this old, supposedly haunted palace. The movie's about a ghost, and then one night she wakes up and sees a woman just sitting there on her bed. She was absolutely convinced it was a real ghost. It is a super chilling story, but as we're about to find out, it's not as unique as you might think. That story about Dimple Kapadia, it's just one of literally countless examples. I mean, we see this stuff everywhere, from those ghost hunting shows with all their fancy gear to movies that slap on that inspired by true events label. But what is really going on here? Are we talking about genuine paranormal encounters, or is something else entirely at play? Okay, let's start with the simplest and honestly the most common explanation for a lot of this stuff. People are just faking it. Sometimes these ghostly mysteries aren't mysteries at all. They're just deliberate hoaxes, usually designed for one thing: money. A perfect historical example, the Foucus sisters, back in the 1800s. These three sisters became massive celebrities in America, claiming they could talk to spirits through these mysterious banging and rapping sounds. People came from all over to see them, and they made an absolute fortune. The truth didn't come out until decades later, when one of the sisters finally confessed it was all a trick. They were just cracking their toes and knuckles. And for a more modern and probably more famous example, let's talk about the Amityville Horror. The story is legendary, right? A family moves into a house and is driven out by all these terrifying paranormal events. But the reality? Well, it was a lot less supernatural. The original murderer made up the ghostly voices part for his legal defense, and the family who moved in after them later admitted they faked the whole haunting to get rich from book and movie deals. Okay, so we've got the clear-cut cases of fraud and lies, but what about when people genuinely believe they've seen something supernatural? This is where we move away from simple deception and into the really fascinating and often tricky world of the human mind. A huge part of why we believe these things comes down to storytelling. Take the 2017 horror film Veronica. It was marketed as being inspired by true events, which made a ton of people think the terrifying story on screen actually happened. But here's the thing, inspired by is very different from based on. It just means the filmmakers took one tiny piece of a real story and then built a totally fictional and way scarier story around it. It completely blurs that line between fact and fiction. But wait, what if it's not just one person? What if an entire family swears they saw the same ghost? Well, that can often be explained by something called mass psychogenic illness. It's a wild phenomenon where a really powerful delusion that one person has can basically become contagious, spreading to other people in their close group. So they all start experiencing the exact same reality, which you can imagine makes it seem way more believable. And this isn't just some abstract theory. It happens in the real world, sometimes with tragic results. In the Barari case in Delhi, a shared delusion led an entire family of 11 people to take their own lives. In another crazy case, an Australian family just suddenly packed up and fled their home on a road trip because they were all convinced they were being hunted. These events really show just how powerful and convincing a shared delusion can be. All right, let's pivot to one of the most famous tools for supposedly contacting the other side, the Ouija board. It's a staple of horror movies and sleepovers, but the secret behind how it really works? It's pure science. This is the big question, right? Every person who uses a Ouija board swears they are not moving the little pointer. They say their hands are just resting on it while it moves all by itself. So if it's not them, and it's not a ghost, what in the world is going on? The answer has a really cool name, the ideomotor effect. It's a psychological phenomenon where your brain tells your muscles to move, but you don't consciously realize it's happening. You expect the spirit to spell out an answer, right? That expectation creates a subconscious suggestion, and your brain sends these tiny, undetectable signals to your hand muscles that move the pointer to the exact answer you were already thinking of. And you can actually test this yourself. It's super easy. Just hang a small weight, like a ring, from a piece of string. Hold it out and try to keep it as still as you possibly can. Now, without trying to move it, just think about it swinging in a circle. You will be amazed when you see it actually start to move, all thanks to those tiny subconscious muscle twitches. So here's the scientific proof, the real kicker. When researchers do tests where they blindfold the Ouija board users so they can't see the letters, guess what happens? The pointer just moves to random letters, spelling out complete gibberish. This proves it's the user's own subconscious mind and their knowledge of the board's layout that's guiding the message, not some spirit from beyond. Okay, fine, but what about all those ghost hunters we see on TV? They're using all this sophisticated equipment that seems to be getting real, concrete evidence of ghosts, right? Well, let's take a closer look at their toolkit and see what their gear is actually detecting. The ghost hunter's favorite toys all have really simple scientific explanations. That infrared camera that's supposedly seeing a ghostly figure, it's probably just picking up a heat signature left on a chair. The EMF meter that's going crazy detecting spirit energy, it's actually just reacting to the electromagnetic field from somebody's cell phone or some bad wiring. And those motion sensors, yeah, they can be triggered by anything from a tiny insect to a bit of dust floating by. This is a fantastic way to picture it. If you sit in a chair for a few minutes and then get up, your body heat stays on that chair for a little while. If you look at that with a thermal camera, that leftover heat signature can look exactly like a ghostly human-shaped figure. It's not a spirit, it's just leftover warmth. And what about those EMF meters? What sets them off? Well, get ready for a list of the most boring things imaginable. Cell phones, walkie-talkies, faulty wiring, microwaves, even the battery pack on the ghost hunter's own camera. Any of these things can make the meter spike, creating the perfect illusion of supernatural energy in a completely normal room. So we've looked at deliberate fakes, powerful psychological illusions, and misunderstood technology. When you put it all together, it brings us back to one central question. How do we tell the difference between a good story and a harmful superstition? Let's circle all the way back to the beginning, back to Dimple Kapadia's story. So what really happened to her? Well, think about it. She spent the entire day on set, acting as a ghost. Her mind was completely soaked in that world. It is incredibly likely that this intense psychological suggestion just primed her brain to experience a delusion when she woke up. Her mind simply played a trick on her. And this really gets to the heart of it. Look, there is absolutely nothing wrong with enjoying a scary movie or telling a good ghost story. That's fun, it's entertainment. But when people, whether it's in movies, TV shows, or online, start presenting the stuff as fact, making false promises, and encouraging real superstition, that's when they cross a line. Ultimately, science offers a clear, rational explanation for pretty much every single paranormal claim out there. The real mystery isn't about ghosts. It's about the incredible and sometimes incredibly deceptive power of our own minds. So the final question for you isn't really, are ghosts real? It's, where do we draw the line between enjoying a great story